our city thought that after listening to people for 2 years, that we could go back to business as usual. But what happens when you listen to people who have never been listened to, who aren't used to being listened to, when you get them together with other people and they feel valued and they feel understood and they feel heard, you no longer have the choice of not listening to those people anymore, right? They have come together with people and they no longer take the treatment that maybe they thought was what they were worth before. We now have told our story, told you what we want. We will now no longer settle for what you were willing to give before. And unfortunately, a lot of times people in power don't understand that, right? So I call that our radical listening phase, and then our right, our revolution started.
Yeah. Okay, the Gentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Gentry. The Gentry Podcast. The Gentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry Podcast today. We have an incredible guest. With me today is Mayor Jaime Kinder of Meadville, Pennsylvania. She literally needs no introduction. Her story is incredible. We're talking going through needing the government herself to leading the government in her municipality. So I'm super excited. I've been thinking about this one for a very long time. But before we get too far into it, Mayor Kinder, how are you doing today?
It's a beautiful day. It's sunny, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. But I definitely want to get into your story. But before we do, I have to start the same way I always do. So what is the special sauce? What makes Meadville the best place to live in the United States?
Meadville's a cool spot, man. It's got really great people. We have a core group of people that work really hard to make this a place, community, right? That's built for everybody, that works for everybody. And we're filling the gap, right? Which is community. So we're getting together and making it easier for people to live. Maybe not this much, but maybe just this much, right? And that makes all the difference. So this is a place that cares about you and cares about the people who live here. And that's how we're doing our planning. So that's the secret sauce, right? Like caring about each other, I think.
That the care for your neighbor, that aspect of community is the special sauce and the glue of so many communities. So I can definitely appreciate that. But one thing I always say, you learn so much about a community by learning about the leadership and who is running the city. So without further ado, I've kind of alluded to it, but please share your background. And I'd love to hear from the beginning. In childhood, did you always know you wanted to become the mayor? And then what was your journey to becoming the actual?
Yeah. No, right? Like often we don't know what is possible, right? We don't even have the imagination. So I never thought about being mayor, right? I grew up in Meadville. Right. My mother grew up here. And just to be honest and be frank, I always like to give a little honor to my mother. She was good. She was funny. She had a hard life. We grew up at a time where, I think that maybe Meadville didn't care about her, right? She was a single mom. She had 3 white kids and then us 3, right? So 2 marriages, and at a time where maybe brown kids weren't ideal, right? So I want to give honor to her because she was good and she loved me every single day, right? And I miss her every second she is gone. So I like to center with that. So I chose to raise my babies in the same city that she raised us, and I was a single mother, right, of 3 wonderful children, and life is really hard. Staying in a house is really hard. I know it doesn't seem like that, right? Like just making sure you have a roof over your head, that you have a job that pays. Oftentimes I had to choose either a good paying job or, having insurance, right? So choosing poverty a little bit, right, was a choice just so we had insurance or that we could afford some things. And I know that sounds silly, but it's not. It's real life. And we have been poor the whole time. But I've had every day to raise my babies, right? Like, so I chose to be with them also. And that's a choice too. It's a choice for poverty. If you choose to raise your babies instead of working more, right? You choose to go to games instead of another shift. You choose to be a coach instead of, right? Like, so unfortunately for a lot of us, especially single mothers, we have to make that choice. Either they get Nikes or they get you. And so I chose my babies every time. And so I will let you know that that's a choice, right, that I made. And it wasn't easy. We've had to live with my mom sometimes. We were very unsure sometimes, housing unsure. But so I grew up in this town, and I was raising my children in this town. What happened is that I started being real nosy as to what's going on, right? And, oh, they're having this community meeting or that community meeting. What are they talking about? How are things changing and what is going on in town that maybe I'm not seeing because my head's been down the whole time raising my kids, right? Just trying to keep afloat. And often that's the reality of a lot of us, especially people who look like us, right? We're just trying to keep our head afloat. So we often don't get to look up a lot. And when I started to go to meetings and be a part of town, I started to see some of the things that were changing. There was a group of people that were working really hard to listen to the people who lived here. There was actually a community initiative. It was called Heart and Soul, or we called it My Meadville, right? It was couple years of My Meadville, and it's where community members got together, and this group of people that was kind of centered in the city went around and had listening circles and talked to the people who lived here. 700 interviews, right? They did in 2 years, and they came up with 8 mission statements that came out of all of those interviews. So I participated in those, some of them, very few, right? Came up with like 8 mission statements about housing, about community spaces, about what Meadville needs, about, public transportation, about food security. And then at the end of that, a report was written, and the report kind of said that Meadville is a good place to live, but racist, right? Like, I'm going to be very candid. And when that happened, what we know is the most hurtful thing to people who are willing to maybe do some things that work with racism, they don't want to be called racist. Like, that is the worst thing. It's worse to be called racist than be racist. And we kind of see that, right? So the world here exploded, things broke, and it started a revolution, right? Like, where people ran for office in this town with no names, right? In a town of 13,000 people, where a lot of the same people or people that knew each other always ran for office. And again, I was not a part of this. I was seeing this stuff while finishing raising my kids. And at that point, I was opening a small business with a partner and just trying my hand at doing some things differently, right, to see if it works. So I opened a small business with a partner, and the people that ran for office, they won. So there were 2 people on a council of 5 people. And then what happened is COVID hit, and the 2 people that won, we'll call them progressive people, Autumn and Larry, they were not a majority. So the things that they wanted to get done and their campaign message were grounded in those 8 vision statements, right, that came out of Heart and Soul, right? They ran on a platform of a rental inspection program, shared green spaces, and a transparent government. Right. So that was their main, right, which sounds pretty common sense. They ended up winning, but they couldn't get anything through. And these are the same people, right? Autumn and Larry is who I saw at these community events, who actually Autumn ran and helped run the Heart and Soul program. She was ultimately downsized from the city after this report went through. Again, when I say people lost their jobs, the city broke. Right. And I'm just being very honest with what happened. And the city was like, when they broke, when I say that, our city thought that after listening to people for 2 years, that we could go back to business as usual. But what happens when you listen to people who have never been listened to, who aren't used to being listened to, when you get them together with other people and they feel valued and they feel understood and they feel heard, you no longer have the choice of not listening to those people anymore, right? They understand they have a voice. They have come together with people and they no longer take the treatment that maybe they thought was what they were worth before, right? Like we now have told our story, told you what we want. We will now no longer settle for what you were willing to give before, right? And unfortunately, a lot of times people in power don't understand that, right? So I call that our radical listening phase, and then our right, our revolution started, right? Autumn and Larry are in office. I have a small business, and they're not getting anything done, right, in office because they're not a majority, right? The system wasn't fixed; it was still broken. It just like a little pieces. And we actually have a movie that was written and made by Dr. Julie Wilson here in Meadville. It's called Bending Hell, and it's about that campaign. Right, like it's about the campaign of Autumn and Larry and how a small revolution gets started. And it's funny because they interviewed me for at the very end of that movie. I'm in it and I say what this means to me, what this win means to me of these two in office. It lit little fires, right? And eventually those fires will connect and we will burn this place down, right? We're gonna burn this place down. I'm trying to be like, I do say some things. And I said, and what it does is it's going to give confidence to people like me. Maybe one day we'll run, right? Maybe we'll think we can run. That's why it's powerful, right? That's what those little fires do, right? Like they lit a fire. They light a fire in us, in the hopeless, in the people who never had that imagination, who don't have that vision, who don't understand, right? And during this time, I read an article. Joe Tompkins wrote an article in Meadville. One of the largest industries that was founded in Meadville was selling to an outside entity. And he wrote this small article. His name is Dr. Joe Tompkins. He's a communications professor at Allegheny College now. But he wrote this article and it was about Dad's Dog Food selling to another company and how maybe they could have sold to their employees and how it would have kept money in Meadville. And I read this article like it was the Super Bowl, because it was brave to me. It was amazing. And the things he was saying, I didn't even know you could say about the people he was saying it, right? He wasn't being mean. It wasn't crazy. But my mom, growing up, worked and cleaned houses for the richest people in town. The people who owned Dad's Dog Food, the people who owned Channel Lock, the people, right, like all of these different things. That's what she did to support us. So it was a very brave thing for me. It was like a revolutionary thing. I couldn't believe anybody in town would say those things. And he said them because he just didn't know, because he's not from here. But it was what I call my revolutionary moment, my moment where I understood that you can be brave and you can say the thing that's real, right? And it moved me that day. And then the second thing that moved me was I read in the paper again, but I also was watching that on council, Autumn had brought up a provision. It was during COVID, and she said we need to have a COVID task force that goes to businesses and asks them if they need help, goes to people who live in homes, people with families, and asks them what they need, right, to make it right now, right? And it was voted down. And the mayor at the time just said, oh, I'll talk to people. That's what he said. And it felt very personal to me. And it felt very much like my city does not care if I make it, right? Like that's how I took that. It felt very much like they do not care about me and they don't care about my business, right? That means they don't care about my kids. They don't care about my family, right? It felt very personal. So that's the link of me, right? Like starting to realize what's going on in my town, feeling passionate about what's going on, and finding a link between the people who are doing the work and seeing them at community things and seeing that they're just people, right? And understanding that I'm also just people, right? Like, wow, we're all just, these people that care about a place, that love a place. And so, frankly, a couple people came to me later. Well, first I met Joe Tompkin, Dr. Joe Tompkin, and just at a meeting. It was a second Saturday meeting. Second Saturday is just an event that we have every second Saturday around our downtown market, and I go to those things, and it's so great to see people and connect. But I met him at a planning meeting, and he introduced himself, and I just was like fangirled about that article, right? Like, and he kind of laughed about it, and I was like, "That was amazing. You're crazy. I can't believe you did that." And he was like, "I wouldn't call it brave." I'm like, "It was brave. It was revolution, right? Like, these are things that moved me." But I got a call from a friend, and she said, "Would you be willing to run for office?" And I said, "My absolute downfall is if I have the time and you need me, I will say yes." It's not always a good thing, but right. Like, I feel very honored that you would like my time. Number one, right? Like, you could ask anybody, how honored am I for you to believe in me? And then, will you run for office? I was like, sure, because there were a couple of seats. It was like school board or council or whatever. And then, so I said, sure, if you guys want me to do that and it would help, I'd be happy to do that. And then later they came to me and said, would you be willing to run for mayor? I was like, man, you guys know, like, I'm a single mom. I don't have money, right? Like, life has not been easy. There's a lot of things that a better person maybe should do this for you, especially if you guys are, my thought about politicians and people in leadership, right? They were not me. Single mom. I'm not even successful at life, right? Like, I don't own a home. I don't, right? Like, all of these things that you see this thing about being successful at life, and I'm not even good at that stuff, right? Like, I'm not making it. I'm not. But I said, sure, if you, right, like, if you guys think so, I'd be happy to do that. But it felt like I was doing that for them. That's not something, right? You asked me, I'm happy to do that. And little by little, this group of people, they showed me that I was valued, right? They valued the things that I was saying. They made me understand that I'm an expert in my life, in living in Meadville, right? At being a citizen of this place, and this place needs help, right? And I am not alone in sometimes feeling hopeless, and sometimes needing help, and sometimes realizing that my community does not care about me, right? The people in charge do not care about me. And frankly, they didn't care about my mother, right? And she, I know, deserved better. And she was a bigger and better woman than I was ever going to be, right? Like, at least that's right. Like, I know that because she loved me. And that made me angry, right? Because she deserved better, right? Even if you don't believe you deserve better, I know she did because she was my mother. And then, right, my race got very ugly and very racist. And it was really hard. And it wasn't just hard for me. It was really hard for my kids. My kids were in high school. And not only did I won the primary. There was only a primary contender. I won the primary, but my town went around and found somebody to do a write-in campaign because they just didn't want me to be in leadership, right? And I ran on the same things that Autumn and Larry ran it. I ran on a transparent government. I ran on a, shared green spaces. And I ran on a rental inspection program because everyone deserves dignity where they live. Everyone deserves a home, right? And so as that happened, again, it got more and more racist. There were three of us that ran the primary and the general. We spent, I think, $16,000, which we thought was really gross, right? Like, elections take money, and we shouldn't be taking money for people that need money. But this is what it took for three of us to run those two. My opponent alone spent $26,000 just on the general for herself, right? The person they found, the person that was willing to use a derogatory campaign in a small town, right? Which I don't do, right? We don't do that because what we're about is what we can do and what we can accomplish. I don't want to talk about what's negative about somebody else, right? And so, needless to say, in that time, I've been a leader that has been built, right? So for me, leaders are not born, they are built, right? They're built with confidence. They're built with support, like support too, right? These people that asked me to run, they supported me through a time, I mean, the worst times in my life, I could say. And I was built out of necessity. I lived in a town that did not care about me. They didn't care about people who looked like me, and it didn't care about people who had as much money as me. They didn't care about our children. And innovation is built out of need. It always has been, right? You can look back in history. Invention has ever been built because we just wanted to do it. It has been built out of need, and leaders are also built out of need, a necessity, right? So, long story short, we won and we hit the ball, or we hit the ground running like a snowball running downhill. Right. And in my first term, we were able to do our rental inspection program. Right. We were able to do the first and the strongest anti-retaliation ordinance in the state that has now been followed by 9 other communities, right, including Allegheny County, which is the largest county in the state. We were able to give police and firemen back their pensions. We established an environmental advisory committee and a climate action plan. We did a non-discrimination resolution. And we were able to start a program, the ambulance program. So now we brought our ambulance service, and we now own it municipally run, right? It's run by our fire department, and we brought it into public hands. And it was a totally new program. We were able to do that within a couple of months. And we are now a safer Meadville. We are a Meadville who cares about the people who work here, cares about the people, right? Our rental inspection program is finally got all of our units just about are inspected, right? And for safety, because again, people deserve to live with dignity. But the ambulance service, which is one of the best services that we can talk about, not only do we have some of the lowest times, right? From the time the ambulance gets to your house to the time that it gets to our hospital is under 4 minutes. We are a safer Meadville. There is no way to argue that, right? But we've also created a program where, that's expensive, right? Where all of our EMTs are also firefighters. They're all cross-trained, right? So we didn't have to hire twice as many people. We're able to use the same amount and still cover both the fire department and the ambulance service at a great wage. We're able to bring them into the union. So our workers are all unionized. And with all of that, right, all of the things that I've told you, we were able to move our bottom line and balance our budget 3 years running. So, and we're talking about in a town that is something like 48% owned by nonprofits. That means they do not pay property tax, right? Only 52% of this town pays the bill, right? For the roads, for the fire, right? So think about that. We've hired more people. We have given back pensions. We have a full complement on our police for the first time. We have a municipal ambulance service. We've created those programs that cost money. We've created a safer Meadville, and we have balanced the budget. We have moved our bottom line, because what they say is a lie. The structure is a lie. You don't have to cut. You don't have to fire. You don't have to do all of these things to move your bottom line. You can create. You can pay people a livable wage. You can create a community that works for everybody, and you can move your bottom line. So that kind of, right, like that's kind of my story, right? I know I don't get too awful personal, right? I am a person that is without community. I would not be able to live or survive or thrive, right? Again, I have 2 kids in college. They're down by Philadelphia, right? I gave my car to my daughter because she lives down by Philadelphia and I can walk everywhere. I share a car with a friend, right? We do a car sharing, right, agreement where we use it when we need it. And it actually sits in my driveway 80% of the time because we don't actually need it that much, right? So, right, like, when I say community is filling the gap, it fills the gap in a way that creates contentment, in a way that helps us thrive, and it's a beautiful thing to have a community that cares about you and feel that every day.
Wow. That is beautiful indeed. The sense of community rings through from the community that you saw on the negative side, not treat your mother the best, but then the community that you gained along the way. So people like the council members, the person that wrote the article that spurred you into to running, and then how they it almost spoke life into you in certain ways and made you confident into to why you should be one of the leaders of the community, to the community that now you're able to boast as your own truly, and balancing a budget and providing more services is something I do not hear too often. So I assume that is a community effort and a team effort to be able to do those things. So I definitely wanted to take the moment to congratulate you, and congratulate the community for being able to do some very, very impressive things. And the next thing I want to know, we didn't touch too deep into housing, and I know across the nation, I say this almost every episode, housing is important. And one of the things you did say was sometimes you felt unsure in housing, or you felt like you had to make a decision between the high paying job and being there for your children. So I'd love to hear, what is Meadville's housing situation look like? What's the housing stock? Is there anything that's underbuilt? Are there any affordability or attainability issues? What does housing look like in the community?
Sure. First, I'm just gonna press on one thing that you said. You said, I'm assuming you have a team. I need everybody to know, I need you to know and everybody to know, I don't do anything alone. Everything is a team effort, right? We are building a place, right, that works for everybody, and no one person can do that. And we shouldn't even pretend like we do anything alone, right? And we don't have to, right? Why do we have to? The world doesn't have to be a lonely place. We work together, we do this thing big, right? Like, and it works for everybody. But yeah, housing is my favorite subject. I go everywhere to talk about housing, right? Because, right, you have some places, some municipalities, right, that have all this money that they bring in, and they're able to like build housing through the city or do, right? That does not happen in rural areas, period, right? Often we are stuck, right? Needing housing, wanting housing, and having to hope that people that care about your community and have good moral and ethical standards will build or buy, or you know what I mean, like something like that. But here in Meadville, we understand that nobody is coming in here to save us, right? We are going to have to save ourselves, right? And that's okay. We can do the things for the people who live here, and they will work because we care about this place. So for Meadville, again, it's this point of, we can't afford to do it at the city level, but what can we do with partnerships and connections, right? This is what and where we've really pointed to. So after the Heart and Soul project happened, what we like to say is that a seed bomb went off, right? And a lot of things grew out of that, a lot of different initiatives. Common Roots is one of those initiatives. So in my town, 70% of the people who live here rent. That is exactly almost opposite of what the state is 60% is homeowners, 30%, right? Or 40%, right? Are renters. In Meadville, we're 70% renter, right? We were founded in 1788. That means our housing stock is very old, right? And so there's a real issue, right? And a power struggle when you come to housing and renters and owners and, and housing stock. And that's why it was so important to have a rental inspection program, right? Because housing stock is aging. People deserve safe places, right? And without regulating that, unfortunately, nobody is just going to live up to the standard, right? Like, we have to regulate that, and it is the government's job to do so, to make sure that the places that are in a municipality are safe and they are dignified for the people who live here, right? Period. So one of these seed bombs landed, and it grew into Common Roots. Common Roots was just a collective of volunteers who came together and realized that how we think about housing needed to change. And Meadville is in a housing crisis. The country is, Meadville is. It's not, it's not unique. So Common Roots is what is land trust. It is a rental co-op, and it is a program that also we are running some other programs so people can become landowners, right? Homeowners, right? So first, the rental co-op is these people got together and they bought a house at an auction, and they just started giving $5 here and there, and they volunteer work, started fixing the place up. Then we realized it was time to get a loan, fix the house, and get one place off the ground. It started with a place on South Main Street in Meadville. It is a 4-person unit. It gave people the opportunity. They were down there. They were helping to build. They got to choose the colors of their countertops and the paint colors, right? And it is it's got solar on the roof, and it's a place where you'd be happy for your mother to live. And I say that because we can all understand what I mean by that, right? A place that you would be happy that your mother was living, right? It is low and affordable rent. And what happens is people earn equity by longevity. So if they stay there 5 years, they actually earn the equity in their unit, so that they end up being able to pull out of an account almost $5,000. So think about this for a second, just a second. Now when you rent, you never have enough money to save money, right? It all goes into your rent. Your landlord gets the equity. And then if you have to move, you're still in the same place, or all of your money is going into this unit. In the rental co-op at Common Roots, you pay in, you make shared decisions about the house that you live in with your housemates. You mow the grass, right? You guys maintain the house, and you have a small budget for repairs or whatever. And at the end of 5 years, you have $5,000. So not only do you learn how to own a house, right? We learn how to own our own home. We are also building wealth, real wealth, right? And when I say that, I mean, when you're poor, right? If your transmission goes out, right? You don't have the money for that transmission a lot of times. What happens then? You don't have a car. You lose your job. You lose your home. You could lose your family and your children, right? All of that from one transmission going out, right? Just from poverty. That's a poverty issue, right? With Common Roots, you have that money to pull from, right? Just from living in the house that you would live in anyway, from having dignified, safe housing that you are proud to live in, you also are building wealth for yourself and your family. Or let's say your transmission never goes out. Guess what? You own or you know how to own a house, and now you have a down payment to buy a house. And now you're part of a land trust that may have houses available, can teach you and help you learn about how to get a loan, can help you and teach you about credit, right? And you've got connections now to go out into the world and buy a home, right? Through programs through Common Roots, or because you have been working and have a down payment for a house. That's how we build wealth. That's how we get people to go from poverty to middle class, right? That's a real program that works. I can't talk enough good about it, because where else do you do that at? Where do you build wealth by renting? You don't, because the system is broken and it's not made for us, right? It's made to keep us in poverty. Unfortunately, here that doesn't work. So we're gonna try something new, and that's what Common Roots is doing. Also, we've got a land trust. We fostered a relationship between the college and Common Roots to get some houses that they were going to tear down for a parking lot and put them in the hands of Common Roots. And so Common Roots now will be selling them at affordable rates, not $200,000, but like $80,000. Right? That means a real person can buy them. That means somebody that is working a minimum wage job, right, still has a chance to be a homeowner, right? Regular people can also become homeowners with this land trust. They also have a self-help program, which is funded through the federal government, and loans through the USDA, which helps with our housing stock. So regular people who want to either build or buy a home, if they are able to find some friends that'll help them fix up the house through this Common Roots program, they will be able to finance the repairs too. So in a place that has a lot of homes that need a lot of work, right? They just need to know some people, and they can buy a home, fix it up, also get the repairs funded through the loan, which is the hardest part, right? Maybe you can get a loan, but you can't fund repairs, right? With Common Roots also helping you find those those people, you're already connected and helping you find the home or the lot that you want to build. So you could build or buy a home. What the city has done in partnership, right, is we have rezoned, right, so that you can build on smaller lots, right? So I think sometime in the 70s, they created a zoning practice of lots needing to be bigger for you to build on. So then there's been no building in Meadville for more than 30 years. Nobody's built any homes. But now we have created, with the help of our fire chief, to make sure it's safe and everything, with setbacks. And now you can build on the lots that are already available here, right? So now it's just making sure we get people in and them understand that they can build on these lots, and we can infill, because that's a big deal too, is just infilling and giving opportunity to everybody to be able to build those lots and or those houses. We've also zoned in cottage courts, which is like having a larger lot and a couple people getting together and being able to build small houses, on a bigger lot. And that's a big deal. So we zoned that in, and then ADAs. We've also zoned in ADAs. So that means that if you have a garage, you could put a mother-in-law suite or an apartment at the top of your garage, or make your garage into an apartment. Again, it's about infilling and creating space for people to use their property in a way that makes room for everybody. So those are three of the things we've passed in our zoning laws. And also right now we're looking at parking minimums. So if you build a home, right, like, do you actually have to have room for, 2 parking spots, right, like off-street parking spots? Or, right, like, do we create a space for people to be able to build on these smaller lots where they can park on the street? Right, like that's just what it is. These are things you have to think about when you're talking about creating homes for people, creating opportunity for everybody, because, right, like, housing justice and creating housing has everything to do with opportunity, right? If you want to rent at 20, or if you want to buy a home at 20, there has to be places to buy, and also, right, the opportunity to buy, right? There has to be safe and dignified houses for families to rent or buy. There has to be safe places and affordable, right? We're talking affordability too, for people at 70, safe, affordable, dignified housing, right? There has to be housing options and housing opportunity, right? We have got to get out of the place where a couple of people control how much rent is, right? And the standard, right? We can no longer be like, well, because I can't afford something, because I don't have a lot of money, I don't deserve dignity. I don't deserve safety. I don't deserve a good place. I take what is available, right? Well, what has to be available has to be safe. It has to be dignified, because every single person deserves good housing. They're paying for it, right? You're paying for it. You deserve that. I often think that renters have like Stockholm syndrome, right? Like we're like, no, they're doing us a favor, but they're not, right? You're paying them for a service, and you deserve dignity where you live. You deserve safety. Your babies deserve to be safe. And we can't get above and find joy and do anything until the bottom rung, right? The floor is a safe and dignified place to live, right? That is the absolute bottom. There is nothing that should be below that. Safe, dignified housing for every single person, and then we can build, right? Like, until we get that is the lowest rung, right? We've got work to do.
Wow, that is very impressive. It is so nice to hear, and I know you're tied to a ton of national groups, mayors groups, democracy groups. Just to listen of how you think through housing, that is definitely somebody that is very tapped in, understands housing. Like you hit all the major things for missing middle housing, from zoning to ADAs, ADUs, to making sure that you're utilizing land trusts and nonprofits and co-ops to create housing. So I again, I want to congratulate you and tip my hat to you for really pushing, I guess, one one question I'm now just saying, this is a personal, just curious. It sounds like you guys have hit all the major things that developers. I know nobody's coming to save you, but it sounds like you guys kind of hit all the major things. You sound very pro housing. Done a lot of zoning and making it easier to build. What do you think is kind of hindering maybe developers or home builders for coming to Meadville?
So, well, firstly, right, like, if you come here to build, I want you to live here, right? Like, I want you to be here. I want you to be part of the community. We are no longer accepting people who are just going to extract from our community, right? Maybe that hinders people from coming. I don't know, right? Right? Like, we want you to come here. We want everybody here. Frankly, you are welcome, and I hope you come and see me so I could give you a tour, right? Like, because this is a good place and people know it. We are not I don't think things are hindering people from coming. I think it is our standards that are growing, right? We are not going to take just what you're willing to give. We have standards here. Our children live here, right? So we want you to come. We want you to put your money in here. We want you to be a part of this community, but we are not going to give you tax breaks, give you the opportunity to, just extract from our community. We deserve better. And so does every community. And again, I'm just gonna go by something you said. I am not pro housing. I am pro people. When you put people first, you have to be pro housing. You have to be, right? Like, we want people to thrive. We are planning for a community that is sustainable and that maybe my grandbabies will have babies in, right? That is that is a place where people want to live, right? With housing that people want to be a part of. They have ownership of a community that cares about them and loves them, right? But we understand a couple of things that are politicized and weaponized, right? That aren't political issues. They're just not. And I don't know if this is too progressive, but housing is not a political issue. It is a right. We have a right to clean, dignified, safe housing, affordable housing, right? That is a right. And I'm so sick of people using it and using us as these pawns in this political warfare, right? I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. We are here to serve the public in the communities that we live, right? Like, that's our job. And if we are not doing that job, we need to be fired. Point blank. There is no other standard, right? Like, I don't care what somebody feels about this, that, or the other. People first, or get out of office, period, right? So I believe the same thing with healthcare, right? Healthcare is not a political issue. Everybody deserves it. The amount of money you make should not define if you get to live or die, period. There is no other, right? Like, it is not a political issue. That is a human rights issue, right? Um, again, with food access and education, I feel the same thing, right? We have to stop letting people use those as political issues. They're human rights issues, right? So, political issue is, if you get a citation, if your grass is over 18 inches or something, right? Like that's different. That's a political issue. Let's fight about that. I'm happy to do that. We do not need to fight about human rights issues. And I think that's where our minds need to shift on that. We are people first, people over profit. There is no other way, right? To make communities, and all communities should work for everybody, period.
I love that. I love the delineation of pro people, and thus you have to be pro getting people into safe and affordable housing to make sure that they're able to provide for themselves and their family. To pro people, and thus being able to be pro healthcare, making sure people that, like you said, which I really appreciated, not having to make a decision of whether I'm going to live or die based on how much money I make, to education, to food access, to water access. These are things that are pro people first, but trickle down into some of the biggest issues that we need to be focused on as America and as a global citizenship. So I totally agree with that. And I really appreciate your passion, it rings through. One thing I will say, so maybe it's not that nobody is coming to save you. It's we want to save ourselves. And I think that delineation is so important. And I appreciate you letting me know that, because I think it's empowering to hear smaller communities just saying, hey, we got this. We're going to do it. Maybe it won't be the way that, New York City does their housing or Los Angeles does their housing, but this is going to be the way that Meadville does housing and does it of and for the people. So I very much appreciate that. And with that, I want to take you off the hot seat and transition to our last chance games. And that comes from improv. So just whatever comes to your mind. I'm going to read three questions and then I'm going to read three questions, but one at a time. You say the first thing that comes to your mind, but after the third question, I'll come back to the first question. You'll be able to change, add, and explain. So without further ado, let's get in. What is a policy that sounds great in practice or in a council meeting, but is hard or almost impossible to implement in real life?
I think, well, that is a hard one. I think a lot of delegation, right? We've had some issues here in Meadville where some businesses have come in and they're just like not good for the community, right? Which are things like smoke shops and these skill games, right? Like, and they pop up really fast and nobody has to work there and they take people's money and they're totally predatory and they hurt businesses around them, right? It's really hard to figure out how to stop that, right? Like, it looks good. Just stop it. Just make sure they can't come in. No smoke shops. No, right? Like, but nobody wants big government. Nobody wants the government to decide what businesses can and can't come into a town, right? Because power changes and ebbs and flows. And, right, like, how do you do something like that? So the thing we ended up doing is like zoning them out of certain spots and then making it so that like games of skill have to come up against and get approval to be in town, right? And in the area they want to be. And then also starting to look at, right, like how do we tax them, right? And police it. Right. Also, those are some things that seem very easy. Just don't let them in, because that's what I get. Don't let them in and just do this. But nobody wants that to happen. Right. Because the real ramifications of deciding who can and can't come in historically have been used against people all the time. And nobody wants big government. So I think that's kind of something that is playing out now in Meadville. Right. With a recent denial of a games of chance. And we had something like 8 pop up within 3 or 4 months, right? Like, and that's what happens because they're, people get cash kickbacks for putting them into their units and they're lucrative. Nobody has to work there, but, right, they really are harmful to a city. And the more that pop up, the more deterrent it is for people to be comfortable in your city walking around. So, and there's real correlation to that. So needless to say, that seems easy. And it is very difficult to do and understand, right? And have a real strategy around.
Wow. Yeah, it does. It seems like just stop them, but then you bump up against so many obstacles and what we truly want our government to do and to be able to do. So I think that was a very important one. My next question is, what is the hardest truth you wish residents knew about timelines and trade-offs in government?
I wish people understood what government really can do, especially at the local level. We make decisions that affect you every day, but it's not always the decision that you think we can make, right? On non-profits, right? They don't pay taxes in the state of Pennsylvania, no property tax. And the only way, right, the way that we get our revenue is property tax, right? That's what pays the bill. So it pays your police, that's what plows your roads, that's what, right, like pays your fire department, keeps the lights on, right? And so it's really hard to ask our property owners for more money, right? When you have big institutions. Meadville has a college, it has a hospital, it's got a lot of, it's a county seat. So we've got the county owning property, the school district owning property, and then a lot of nonprofits, right, in town. And people feel very hurt about that. And they get very angry at us for not charging them or doing more, but that is a state issue and there's nothing we can do except try to get the state to listen to us, right? And talk to the nonprofits about what partnership really is and, you know what I mean, that type of thing. So I wish people understood, you know, the actual role of local government, what we can and can't do, right? And then maybe how that affects them and how maybe voting affects that and how maybe getting our voices heard maybe affects that. So it is very hard to be a small municipality and it's very hard to do the things that people need when you are always running at a deficit and you don't want to put more burden on people, but your hands are tied in almost every way. Fortunately, we've been able to think outside the box a little bit, but that's not going to work forever, right? And so those are kind of the points that I wish people truly understood.
That's a tough one. That balance of what brings the I'll say the like the revenue side into the city, but then how that affects the services that are able to be delivered. The juxtaposition of balancing that, I can only assume has to be very difficult. Then my final question. This is a fun one. I get to give you some free money. So if I said you can have unlimited money, unlimited resources, unlimited whatever you need for an entire year, what challenge or what would you provide for me?
I think that for Meadville, I think I would definitely tackle housing. It is just, I mean, besides the really fun thing is I always thought that if I ever won lots and lots and lots of money, literally go the route of paying every single person in Meadville's, you know, gas and electric and water bill down to zero, because that's when, right, like everyone that's ever had so that they can start from zero. Because a lot of people are paying a lot of money, you know, on, but I would also build and take the empties and fix them up and really we would just give them to people who have always wanted to be a homeowner, who have who have children and have the buy-in of this town and want to be here, right? Uh, Changing the dynamic of this town. Frankly, we need 640 units in this town to be able to control so common roots need to own that many units to be able to control the rents here in town. We've even done that. Like we can make market value different, right? If we own this many units, right? We could control that. So it's kind of one of those things, right? Could we really truly make it affordable? Because the only people who can actually make it affordable to live here are landlords, right? And until we actually own the land and own the units and collectively decide that we're going to make the market lower, right? It's not going to get any lower and it's going to follow the country. So I think we would tackle housing and then we would put out a guide so everybody else could tackle housing, right? We would make this thing grow. Talk about a seed bomb, right? It would grow everywhere. So I think that that's what we would do. We would spend this year creating an atmosphere where not only tenants had power, right? But that we had enough units to control rent, and we changed those numbers from 70-30 renter homeowner to maybe the state average or at least 50-50. So if you got it, I'll take it. And we will do big things with it.
Well, if I had it, you'd have it too. No, I truly appreciate that, and it speaks to how much you care about the residents and your community, because that would be very special to provide home ownership to people that truly have equity in the community, but providing them with that actual equity into their home would be incredible. Now that's all I had for today, but before we close out, do you have any final words that you'd like to share to our community or to the greater viewing populace at large?
Yeah, and I think that I say this every time I speak or at any convening or right, like a lot of the places I go are filled with organizers and leaders and people doing the work. And I like people to understand that leaders are built; they are not born, right? And if there is a need in your community, unfortunately, that leader might be you, right? If nobody is running for the office, if nobody is leading in the way that the people that are around you need, right? It's possible that it's you. Do not be afraid. Do not think that you're not smart enough. You're not that you're not qualified, right? Because if you live there, and you have been there and you see the need, you are qualified, right? You are an expert at living in the area, you know the people, and sometimes people just need somebody to stand up first, right? So stand up first, right? You might be that person. You're worth it, you're worthy, and I can't wait to see it.
I think that's a great message to end on. Stand up first. You are worth it and you are worthy. For everyone here at Gentry, I'd like to say thank you, Mayor. This has been incredible. I've learned so much. I told you beforehand, I like listening to you just to pick up some ideas and truly learn and see how people with that servant spirit truly lead their community. So I'd like to thank you. And then to the viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Jonathan Mason. And with me today, I had Mayor Jaime Kinder, who is the mayor of Meadville, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much and have a great day.